What it do? See if the mic actually works this time. What's going on, everybody? Can you hear me all right? We've had some mic issues in the past with these things. Well, hang on. Oh. Hey there, Kelly. Am I coming through all right? Yay, finally. It's hit or miss with these things. Every now and again, I just come on here and there's no sound. How's it going, guys? You guys doing all right? Had a good week? This is the 4K streams. Yay, we made it to 4,000. If you guys got any like story questions or anything you want to ask, go right ahead. I got books. If you guys want me to read something particular, let me know. Probably for the first like 5 or 10, we'll just like answer questions or just hang out. I'm open to whatever. Oh, hang on. Where did my phone go? It was a good week. I was off all week, so it was a pretty good week. Didn't do a whole lot of anything, so worked out good for me. I mean, got caught up on some stuff and really just got a lot of rest in, which I probably needed. Let me post this live stream to a couple of places. Oh yeah, that's work's got such a weird system for overtime that like every now and again I'll take a short week, take a Wednesday and a Thursday off. That way I can have a whole week off. It feels nice just to kind of hang out, not have to do anything. Might start doing that a lot more. They've got a lot of these weird deferred comp days that you lose if you don't use, so might as well take them. They're not going to let me have them otherwise. was going to see if we could get a few more people in, but I may. Let's see. May do some stories. Do you guys want to hear anything particular? I mean, days off like that are weird. Like, I'll have short weeks and long weeks. Like, next week's going to be an extra long week because I've got a mandatory overtime day. So that's going to suck, but I mean, the pay is good. Yes. Do something from Bleak Vista. Let's see. What do we got? Try not to get one that's too long. That one should be good. Start with reflections from the highway. I'll stop in between stories and interact and let you guys ask some questions or whatever it is you want to do. I mean, this is you guys' stream, so I'm just kind of here. All right. Driving is easily the most tedious part of my job. I'm a salesman for an all-in-one printer company, and business has been slow for the last few years. With the rise of personal printers, no one is lining up to buy BizHubs or business centers these days. Our loyal customer base has helped us through these troubling times, which is why I met Garrison and Marcos, attorney at law, on the day in question. I'd been trying to sell them on the latest color all-in-one to replace their current model, which was a few years old. They sent me back to the office with a "we'll think about it," and I started the 4-hour drive back to the office. That's how I came to be on the highway behind the truck in the first place. The sun was setting when I left the law firm, and it was already dark by the time I got on the highway. I mingled with the cars and the big rigs that made the interstate their home and was behind a particularly large 18-wheeler when I first noticed the thing. It started as a reflection. You ever noticed how an animal's eyes will reflect the light? Well, it was like that. I was sitting behind him with my low beams on when I noticed the sparkle from beneath the trailer. It was 3 or 4 small reflections, and my mind started obsessing over it. What could be making those reflections? Some kind of axle or an ornament that the driver had stuck under the truck? It probably seems silly to obsess over something like that as you read my story, but when you're stuck in traffic out on the interstate, your mind searches for all sorts of things to occupy your time. Whatever it was about I was about midway between whatever it was about midway between the front and the back wheel, too far under the truck for me to make it out. It was fun, like a mystery to puzzle over as I sat stuck in gridlock. Some wreck up the way had brought us to a halt, and as I adjusted the radio in the beat up old car they gave the salespeople to drive, I found my eyes returning to that thing again and again. My brain just wouldn't leave it alone, and I began to create reasons for the thing being under there. Could be for stability. Maybe the driver had put it under there so people didn't hit the back of the trailer in the middle of the night. It could be one of those stupid things people often hook to their trucks to just because they can. Whatever it was, my mind had decided to chase over it. I was watching it when my cell phone rang, and as I fished it out of my pocket, I found my eyes searching for it again as I answered. "So," the boss asked, "can we go ahead and put them down for a new printer?" They said they'd think about it, but they also said their current printer was fine, so I wouldn't expect to see a new order from them. Hey guys, if you're just joining us, we're reading Reflections from the Highway. So it's just getting good. You've got to come in at a good spot. He sighed. "Damn, I was really counting on offloading a couple of these on the firm. Did you tell them about the added features?" Of course I did. I was about to tell him I was no rookie salesman when I looked up and almost dropped my phone. The thing I'd been focusing on for the last 20 miles had moved. It was subtle, but you notice these things when you'd been staring at them for a long time. The thin fiber filaments had shifted somehow, and the pattern had changed. I was almost sure of it. I could hear my boss asking if I was still there, and I assured him that I was. I told him I'd be back in the office in a few hours, and he told me to just head home, that I could turn in my reports tomorrow. Sounds like you could use some sleep. You sound a little jittery. I thanked him and told him that I'd see him tomorrow before hanging up the phone and looking back at the thing under the truck. I could see 6 surfaces reflecting back at me now, instead of the 4 that I'd seen a moment ago. They looked even more like eyes the longer that I stared at them. Whatever the wreck was up ahead they must have cleared it out of the way, and we were suddenly moving again. We were bumping along briskly, and I was glad for the shift. My mind had suddenly turned that thing into some kind of that was likely some kind of ornament into something dangerous, and I really wanted to be from behind this truck. There was no chance of getting around them, though, as traffic was still pretty tight. I was trapped behind the 18-wheeler, and the one behind me was and the one behind me for the foreseeable future. And it appeared I'd be stuck looking at that thing for a while. So for the next 2 hours, we drove. It was the most nerve-wracking drive of my life. The longer I looked at the truck, the more I convinced myself that it was no optical illusion. Whatever was under there was definitely moving, and it had quite a few legs. It was using 2 of the thinner ones to hold itself underneath the truck. The other 6 or 8 or even 10 were used to anchor itself underneath there. What was worse that what was worse were those all too reflective surfaces that I still thought of as eyes. They stared straight at me, and I began to believe that I knew it could see me. We're reading Reflections from the Highway if you guys are just joining us. So have a seat, listen to a story. I shook my head the first time I thought this. I was tired. I'd had too much coffee, and I was just seeing things. These were the excuses that ran around and around inside my head, like a dog chasing its tail. I didn't want to believe I was behind some. I didn't want to believe I was stuck behind a truck carrying a very different sort of cargo. I wanted to believe I was just seeing things and making things up to pass the time. That sort of delusion only lasted until the thing started moving closer. Gotta wet the pipes a little there. You see, the longer I watched it, the longer it watched me. I don't know if it knew I could see it, but it didn't seem to like the level of scrutiny I was giving it. It sat midway between the cab, watching me like a predator watches its prey, and the longer it went on, the less safe I felt inside my car. Something that big could get in through the window or break the windshield. I would have nowhere to go in this gridlock, and I'd be an easy target if it chose to attack. But I was still trying to be rational, trying to be realistic. There was no way that whatever it was alive. It was it was a trick of the light. It was just my mind playing tricks on me. When I finally got home, safe behind my apartment door, I'd laugh about how silly I'd been and feel really stupid. I was a grown man behind the wheel of a car, jumping at shadows. I began to use this idea as a security blanket, insulating myself in it, so I didn't go crazy behind the wheel of my car. That was when it moved again. The reflective eyes shifted suddenly. I don't mean they went out like a blink. I mean they shifted. I was looking at them one minute, and the next it slid beneath the trailer's underside. Suddenly, those eyes came closer. They were less than 10 feet from my car now, peering under the trailer at me as I tried to maintain my speed. I know how that sounds, but it's the truth. Whatever it was had finally tired of being watched and decided to get a closer look. I felt a sudden stir of primal fear. This must have been what early man had felt when it encountered something it just didn't understand, when it saw the long teeth and heard the growl of some unknown predator. when it saw the all too intelligent eyes of an animal that was a little too human reflecting in the darkness, when it came to realize that the safety of the cave could also be a trap. I imagined that it felt just as helpless as I did now. Helpless, but intent on living, too. I tried again to convince myself I was being silly. This was nothing more than a trick of the light. It was some errant spider webs under the cab that my headlights were catching. A web that had come loose and presented itself as some kind of boogeyman. I suddenly knew how to alleviate my fear. I'd flip on my high beams. The high beams would show me the truck's underside, and I could see the source of all my fear. I reached for the switch, my hand much less steady than I thought it would be, and wrapped my fingers around the knob. For a moment, I couldn't bring myself to turn them on. Did I really want to know? Did I really want this thing to know that I knew? Once the monster in the closet knows that you know it's there, does it have any choice but to eat you? I shook my head and flipped the lights on. I know now that I should not have done that. We're reading Reflections from the Highway if you're just joining us. We're coming up on the end. So if you've got any stories you'd like me to read, let me know. I've got all my books right here. What was under the trailer was no spider web, but the monster that I had feared it was. It was a spider the size of a large dog. It was easily 4.5 feet tall and was hunkered beneath the trailer's cluster of wheels. It looked at me upside down with its legs clinging to the metal, its fangs dripping some translucent liquid and clicking together as it squinted. It made a high, angry sound that I could hear from behind my closed windows, and the look it gave me was far too expressive on a face so terrifying. My brain seemed to give me a choice between fight or flight, and in my cowardice, I chose flight. I pulled around the truck, driving on the road's soft shoulder as I sped around it and the line of angry cars. Fortunately, there was no police officer in that line. Fortunately, the exit ramp was just a short distance from the truck. I whipped onto the ramp and left the highway, pulling into a small gas station about a mile later. It took me nearly 30 minutes to make my breathing come at regular intervals, expecting that spider creature to attack my car any minute. When I regained control, I drove home, deciding to take back roads rather than risk getting back on the highway. It took an extra hour, but it felt worth the time, and I didn't worry that I was staring. I didn't have to worry what was staring at me from under a truck. So often in these stories, a moment of horror comes afterward. Some accident, a truck found abandoned on the road, a dead body in a truck stop. But there was none of that for me. I never heard a news report alluding to anything strange or anything out of the ordinary. I could almost forget it until I close my eyes and see those far too expressive eyes looking back at me, and as the high beams pinned it to the underside of the big rig. I take back roads whenever I travel now, avoiding the highway at all cost. I avoid big rigs as well. I don't ever want to see anything like that again. And that was Reflections from the Highway. Oh, hopefully you guys are having a good Sunday. If you're just joining us, this is our 4K stream. So, yay, we made it. If you've got any story questions or any story requests or just anything you'd like to ask, feel free. I'm here for foreseeable future, so I got time. I'm a bit of a lifetime arachnophobic, so I don't mind spiders now. If I find them in the house, I tend to put them outside, but I'm not the biggest fan of them. They're okay though. They do their job and they do it pretty well. I don't have as many bugs in the house as I probably would. So what are you guys up to this Sunday? Besides sitting here watching me on live stream, I guess. You guys up to anything fun? I'm just kind of hanging out. As I said earlier, this is my last day on my vacation, so Back to work for me tomorrow. Yay. Works out good for you guys. I got a 6-day work week next week, so that's a lot of writing that's going to get done. I'm actually considering just nosing down and getting some stories done so that I can turn them into books a little faster. I'm about a quarter of the way done with the Rayford Woods. I think I'm about halfway done with Bright Access, so I'm thinking about just maybe getting them done so you guys get them a little sooner. I think we're almost done with the Laughing Audience stuff too. Then I can make those into a book and put them up on the channel. I know they're not usually a fan favorite, but I mean, I like them. They were probably one of the first series I ever wrote, and it's hard to say if they're one of my favorites anymore, but I like them pretty good. I definitely like to do something with that demon story I gave you guys last Wednesday. I think that's got potential to be another series for Monday, probably. You guys are so quiet tonight. Goodness. Okay. Well, let's see here. Oh, read a little out of Dark Journeys. Not a bad Sunday. I mostly played a lot of Fallout New Vegas. I've been playing a lot more Fallout since I saw the show. I just get weird hairs to play Fallout games again sometimes. Let's see. What are we here? Oh, dang, I forgot I used to put these other ones in here. It's weird to find Stragview stories in these collections anymore, or like Laughing Audience stories and things. I always forget that I used to put those in there. Now they've got their own little books. Let's see. Anything too. Aha. Oh, this is a good one. This is one of my favorites. It's called Fortunate. If those of you who remember from way back, this was the one about the cookies. I looked at the sign over the register and scoffed loudly. It hung above the bowl of fortune cookies like a silent guardian, and it had never made any sense to me. Customers are cautioned to take only one fortune cookie. Taking more than one cookie may be hazardous to the customer's health and sanity. Management. I had been coming to Yishinshi Guizo for the last 10 years. Sorry, my pronunciation's terrible. And that sign had always sort of made me roll my eyes. The food made the place well worth the 5-minute walk from my house, and I'd never gotten sick here as I had at some of the Chinese food establishments I frequented. The food was great, the prices were fair, and the customer service was second to none. Yinshi Guizhou was a place I came to when I was depressed. It was the place I came to when I was celebrating or when I just needed some comfort food at the end of a long day. It was my all time favorite restaurant, and I couldn't think of anywhere else I'd rather eat. I had actually met my wife here 5 years ago. Her date stood her up, and I was coming in for takeout. We both sat in the waiting area, her hoping for a table since the place was bustling, and me just waiting for my takeout, and we struck up a conversation. By the time my food came up, she had asked me to stay and eat with her, and I had agreed. A year later, we were married, and we've been coming back to the restaurant ever since. I was here again on Friday night, date night for me and Lisa, waiting for my usual sesame chicken with pork fried rice for her, General So with white rice for me, and an egg roll each. It was crowded. The restaurant was always crowded. As I stood before the counter, that sign irked me as I saw it again. That was probably because the cookies here were my favorite part of the meal. The owner is a world class pastry chef as well as a great cook. He makes cakes for the shop. His fried cheesecake is to die for, but I think I love his fortune cookies the best. I know, I know what some of you are going to tell me that fortune cookies aren't an authentic Asian delicacy, but the guy has embraced them here at Yinchiguzo. He makes them from scratch, putting the fortunes in himself, and they're so buttery and delicious that I could eat about a ton of them. He refuses to sell them, saying they're only meant to be enjoyed one at a time, and I can't imagine how much money he loses making them. Wrapped delicately in paper holders, they mocked me from the bowl as I stood looking. Leaning forward, I grabbed about 6 of them and popped them into my pocket. I couldn't tell you why I did it, not really, but it was something I would come to regret. We're reading Fortunate if you're just joining us, and it's just starting to get good, so have a seat. Here's some stories with us. Your order, sir, said the voice of Mrs. Kim as she came around from the back. I jumped, looking guiltily as I smiled and thanked her for the food. As I turned to go, I heard her say something almost too low for me to hear. Be careful with those. Remember the rules, sir. I turned back, but she was already disappearing behind the curtain that separated the front from the back of house. I shook it off. I must have misheard her, I thought to myself as I took my food and left. I traversed the street, weaving between couples and clumps of people on their way downtown as I made my way home. As I walked, I felt the cookies rustling around in my pocket and decided to have one. I reached in and pulled out a hand wrapped paper cover, looking at the little message scrawled on the outside. Good fortune had been written on the outside, and as I opened the wrapper, I picked the fortune out and ate the delicious cookie in a single bite. It was still soft, still warm, and the cookie tasted fresh from the oven. They always seemed to taste like that, and I assumed that he made them fresh every day. I looked down at the little paper and thought for a moment that it might be handwritten too. Did the owner handwrite his fortunes? Or something like that? That level of detail really made these that much more special. I smiled as I read the fortune. Even if it was handwritten, it was still kind of generic for a fortune cookie. Tumultuous times are right around the corner. Aren't they always? I said to myself, putting my keys into the lock of my door as I stepped inside. 10 minutes later, I had the wine chilling in the sink, the food transferred to plates, and I had found the perfect movie on Netflix for us to cuddle up and watch together. I had all I had it all arranged and ready for her. As I switched over to regular TV, the movie primed and ready to play, I looked at my watch and tisked. It was already 8:30. She should have been here by now. She had been working later and later these days, and I was beginning to become worried. I reached into my pocket and pulled out another of the delicious cookies. I stopped before unwrapping this one, reading the handwritten message on the outside before I unwrapped it. One per visit. Do not forget the rules. I felt my brows furrow a little. That was weird. What an odd thing to write on the wrapping of a cookie. I shrugged and pulled it out of the wrapper, pulling the fortune out as I ate the cookie. This one was good, but not as good as they usually were. It was buttery, but a little dry. Tasted like a leftover from yesterday. As Sports Center came on, I looked at the scrap of paper beside and blew air out of my nose in a little chuckle. A loved one is thinking of you. Another classic. My phone rang about that time, and I picked it up, looking at the picture displayed on the home screen. Lisa's smiling face decorated the screen, and I smiled to myself as I picked it up. We're reading Fortunate if you're just joining us, so have a seat, listen to some stories. Hey, honey, you almost here? I got everything ready for the date tonight. Her breathing on the other end was heavy, and it took her a few minutes to compose herself. Babe, I need to tell you something, and I need you not to interrupt me, okay? That made me nervous. Lisa sounded panicked, and I didn't like the thought of her driving while she was in that state. I could hear the sound of the engine in the background, and it sounded like she was driving very fast. I looked at the clock and realized it was later than I thought. Traffic could be nuts this time of night, and I wished that she would pull over. Are you okay? You sound like you're. Just listen and don't interrupt, okay? Okay, I said, hoping that would calm her down a little. I took out another of the cookies as she prepared to speak and unwrapped it absent-mindedly, taking the fortune out with a deft hand. I'm I'm pregnant, she said quickly, and in a way that made me think she was expecting me to be upset. Quite the contrary, we had been trying to have a baby for years, but couldn't seem to make it stick. We thought we finally made it work a few months ago, but she had ended up miscarrying, and it had hit her hard. She had really fallen into her work then, staying late and working on her off days, and these date nights had been the only time we really got to see each other. The news that we were having a baby made me ecstatic. I was confused as to why she was so upset. The cookie was dry as I crunched into it, this one definitely stale. That's wonderful, dear, I said through a mouthful of cookie. I'm so happy you. It's not yours, she explained, and the cookie turned to ash in my mouth. I felt it stick in my throat, the dry pastry turning to cement, and I hacked it up and spat it on the carpet. It looked a little off as it sat in a congealing mess there, but my mind was not on the cookie. Not mine. How could it not be? I've been having an affair for the last 3 months. When we lost Davin, I couldn't get over the depression. Someone at work had been flirting with me for a while, and one night I just, oh God, I don't know what to do. She was crying, and I could already hear that it was turning ragged and ugly. I wanted to be angry. I tried to be furious, but I couldn't in the face of her sobbing. Come home. We'll work it out. We can. Huh? She huffed out, and I heard a loud pop of static before the phone line went dead. Hello? Hello? Lisa? But there was no one. I sat forward, bumping the table and sending the plates I had made spilling onto the ground. I heard the dry snap as another one of the cookies crumbled in my pocket, but I hardly noticed. I tried calling her back, but it went straight to voicemail. I called again and again, becoming more frantic with each phone call, until I finally bounced it off the carpet floor in a rage. What the hell was going on? What had happened to her? Excuse me. I felt something papery against my palm, and when I looked down, I saw the fortune had plastered itself against it. I caught sight of the words, and it quelled my rage with cold fear. Your joy will quickly become ashes in your mouth. What the hell was that? That was not a normal fortune. Fortune cookies were almost always benign, or at least neutral. Did the owner write these himself? Who the hell put a thing like that in a cookie? I stared at it for a few minutes before retrieving my phone and trying to call her back. The screen was cracked now, but that hardly seemed to matter. As my phone remained silent and hers remained unreachable, I became scared. What if something had happened? The fortunes continued to nag at me. So far, each of them had been accurate in their own way. What the heck was going on here? This was too elaborate for a prank, and if it wasn't amusing. I had started to clean up the food I had spilled when the phone finally began to ring. I grabbed it up, praying it would be her face. Instead, it was a blocked number. I It looked odd through the star pattern of the broken glass, and as I sat down, I could once again feel the broken cookie poking at me in my pocket. I reached in and threw both of them on the table. One of them had come unwrapped, and the fortune stuck to my fingers as my hand came free. My curious mind would not allow me to ignore it, though now I wish I had. You will receive 2 phone calls. Both will bring you only sorrow. I picked it up on the fourth ring. Hello, Lisa? I asked hopefully. Hello, are you the emergency contact for Mrs. Lisa Callahan? I am, I answered, unsure if I wanted to. This is Officer Wiseman. I'm afraid there's been an accident. Is my wife okay? I asked, still hopeful. The officer was silent for a few minutes. I'm going to need you to come down to St. Mark's and identify her remains. The phone slipped out of my hand again, and I could hear the officer saying hello from the carpet. The last cookie sat on the table, ominous in its white paper holder. The edges of the paper were black, whatever was inside having seeped into it. The covering bore a legend that made my breath hitch, and though I felt my hands reach to open it, I wanted nothing so much as to throw it out the window unread. The black letters on the front read, "Those who do not follow the rules are doomed to live with the consequences." My shaking fingers found the white paper just as the phone went silent. I've been lying on the floor, smelling the aroma of my old Chinese food for the last 3 hours. I don't know what to do. Someone came to knock on my door, but I ignored them. They said they were the police, but I don't care. Lisa's gone, and I fear that may not be the end. I'm almost glad that it may not be the end. The world outside has quieted some as the night stretches on, and I continue to lay on the carpet in the fetal position, using what may be my last few hours to write this message. The black stuff that poured out of the wrapper, bits of moldy cookie floating amongst it, was nothing next to the message that oozed to the surface. Your end will not be as quick as hers. So, if you see a sign that tells you to only take one, remember that the rules are there for a reason, and those who do not obey them may be forced to live with the consequences. Alrighty. Oh, that was fortunate. Hope you guys are enjoying the stream. I will definitely not be up much longer. After this stream, probably be about bedtime for me. Oh, so anything you guys want clarification on in the stories, or anything you guys want to ask or anything? I'm open to anything. I mean, I'm here for you guys. This is your 4K stream, and I really appreciate you guys for being there and helping me hit 4K. I'm sure we'll be at 5K and 10K before long. I mean, we're chugging right along here. It's been a lot of growth this last year. I mean, just the last couple of months, we went from like close to 3K to breaking 4K after just an errant Reddit post. It was wild. I had asked somebody a question on a forum, and suddenly I've got like 1,500 new subs. It was crazy, but crazy in a good way, for definite. Any stories you guys want to hear? I've got about everything. Well, let's see. Trying to knock over my screen here. Oh, hey, Lisa. Thank you. I try to pick good ones. Try to pick them where they're not going to like blow my voice out either, so you guys haven't got to listen to my raspy voice. Well, let's see. It was just a comment I left. Somebody was complaining about how narrators complain about their workload when they only put out like one video a week, and they make enough money to cover themselves for the whole month. And I was like, okay, well, when does that happen? Because I put out a video 7 days a week, and I'm barely clearing $200 a month. And suddenly they all wanted to know what my channel was and what my content was, and they wanted to look. So I posted a link to my channel, and then suddenly just the numbers started increasing. It was wild. Like those of you that were on the 3K stream, we were almost to 4K when we did the 3K stream. Like it was already up there. It was crazy times. Like I was getting ready. I think we were at like 2,800, and I was getting ready to do the 3K stream probably in a couple of weeks. And then all of a sudden I think we hit 38 that night. Like we gained like 1,200 subs in like a matter of hours. Like it was nuts. It was definitely a windfall. Couldn't do it again for definite. Like it was a total fluke. Um, I guarantee it would. You would never see that kind of thing happen again. Reddit's fickle like that though. Like every now and again, you hit that perfect storm on Reddit where like you just everything works out. Most of the time, if you try self promotion, you just get downvoted to oblivion. But I don't know. The horror community on Reddit is like strangely inclusive anyway. So most of the time, they're more than willing to work with you. I don't even think this was on like a horror sub though. I think this was just on YouTube, or a YouTube subreddit or something. So like kind of out of my wheelhouse, but it all worked out pretty good. Ugh, goodness. I've I'm waiting on some things to come together, but hopefully pretty soon I've got you guys a 5-part grandpa story that's all about Glimmer. I'm just waiting on some lines to come in. Ladama had reprised her role as Glimmer, and she had a look at what I needed, and she was like, "This is a lot. This is going to take me some time." And I was like, "Take your time. I mean, you are the titular character there. We'll do it when you have a moment." And so she's been like sending them in a little bit at a time, but I'm pretty excited for that one. That one's going to kind of end year 2 of Grandpa out. So um, it should be a lot of fun. It'll be the first look at the Moon Elves that Glimmer is a part of. There might be some familiar faces there, not to spoil anything. Excuse me. Let's see. All right, well, get some sleepless hours here. If you guys like any of these books, hang on. Let me get a link here. If you guys like any of these books and you would like some of your own, I'm gonna post a link in the chat here. If you go to the Amazon page and you click on my profile, that'll take you to it'll take you to my account on there, and you can find all the books. Like I've got like 8 books up there now. They're mostly compilations, but like if you like the stories, just go ahead and have a look. It's most of them are pretty reasonable, like 10, $15, I think. Shoot, if you message me, I think my email address is in my profile on here. If you message me, I'll send you a signed one for like for $15. I mean, that's what I've usually been doing lately. Get you a signed copy, Let's see what we can find with Sleepless Hours here. Ooh, that's a good one. You're welcome, Kelly. Like I said, that's got all of them. I know I'm thinking about maybe working on one in the next couple of weeks to put out about summer stories. Like I got a bunch of like summer camp horror stories and like scout stories and just like summer stories in general that I think I could put into something. I never see anybody do summer horror, so it might be nice to. I think the only summer horror I've ever read was Goosebumps, and that was like way young when I read that. So, um, I don't know. You don't really see a lot of it outside of slasher films. If you guys can think of one, let me know. But other than like Jason Voorhees movies, I don't think I've ever, the Friday the 13th movies, I don't think I've ever seen any like summer horror. Like, you know, most of it's like at a scout camp or something, or like at a summer camp, or, you know, there's never any like just Honestly, I think of it as almost summer horror because it happens in between school semesters. They're out for summer break. So like that to me is that perfect mesh of like summer horror and like boys adventure kind of horror, which I also really like. I really like, like adventure horror, like Stand by Me or like It, something where they're just out being kids. I really like that kind of horror. Really jives with me. Let's see. All right, we'll do shower blindness. They think I'm crazy, but I know something is trying to get me. What you are feeling is normal anxiety. Stick to your medication, keep your appointments. We can help you get over these paranoid feelings. My therapist says it's all in my head, but I know better. Paranoia didn't try to kill me when I was 4. When I was 4, I nearly drowned in the bathtub. We had a big old grungy plastic tub in my parents' bathroom, where I took my baths. I can remember it vividly. The tub was full of suds, and my mother was reading a paperback on the toilet as she observed me at play. My boat and my duck bobbed happily on the surface, and I pretended the duck was a sea monster. It stalked the ship through the foam, getting ready to strike, when the phone rang in the hallway, and my mom left to get it. She was gone for about a minute, but that was all it took. My duck attacked the boat, dragging it under the water. I submerged as well, closing my eyes and dipping below the soapy water. Then, as my duck battered the ship under the warm deluge, I felt something wrap its hand around my shoulder. I struggled for a moment, confused and suddenly terrified, and as the breath puffed out of my lungs, I felt myself dragged deeper than our bathtub had ever been. I kicked and struggled, and when something else grabbed me around the neck, I bit it. My mother dragged me out of the tub, my teeth still clenched on her arm. I would have drowned then and there if she hadn't saved me. That was the first time, but it was far from the last. I was terrified of baths after that. I was afraid that something would get me if I ever got in the tub again. That was not to say I never bathed again. My mother still insisted that I have a bath, so I didn't become the smelly kid in class. I would fight her during baths, refusing to sit in the tub or even entertain the idea of getting close to it. Finally, she would throw me in, clothes and all, into the tub. There, I would wash as quickly as possible and jump back out. I would always wash my hair in a frantic, fitful way, but I always felt like something was watching me. I could feel it creeping up on me, and I was always shaking when I opened my stinging eyes and looked behind me. I quickly learned to take showers, and for a while I felt relief. They appeased my mother. She didn't care how it happened, as long as I was bathing. It would take as little time as possible, but I still felt those eyes on me whenever I showered. I could feel something slimy, something hateful, sitting on the corner of the tub and peeking at me from the drain, just waiting for its chance. I would glance around, trying to see it as the shampoo stung my eyes, but there was never anything there. We're reading Shower Blindness. If you're just joining us, it's getting good. So have a seat, listen to a story. I lived like that for years, afraid of the thing that watched me as I showered. Finally, it got to the point that I could almost feel its eyes on me while I lay in bed, the bathroom door joining onto my bedroom. I would close it, sometimes even prop a chair underneath it, but I would still lie awake and swear I could feel those eyes staring at me. I could feel them when I went to the bathroom as well, and it finally became too much to handle. I was 13 when I finally told my parents about it. I was sitting on the couch and shivering in a towel as I cried and cried, pouring my heart out to them. I told them about the thing that had tried to get me when I was young. I told them I was going crazy, feeling the eyes on me all the time. I told them that I couldn't function anymore and that I didn't know how much longer I could live with this kind of fear bubbling inside me. They took me to a psychiatrist, feeling I might be a danger to myself. They weren't wrong. I was quickly approaching the point where my anxiety and paranoia would have driven me towards something drastic. The psychiatrist listened, made notes, and told me that it sounded like I had a case of scropophobia. Since I'd been suffering from these fears since I was small, he put me on medication and suggested that my parents monitor me for any changes in behavior. His diagnosis brought on the most comfortable week of my life and nearly led to my death. The pills calmed me down, evened me out, and allowed me to live outside my anxiety for the first time since I was 4. I could walk into the bathroom, sleep with the bathroom door open, bathe in peace, and no longer feel the penetrating eyes of my bathroom stalker watching me. My parents commented after the first week about how much calmer I seemed to be, how much happier, and that was when I made a colossal miscalculation. We're reading Shower Blindness if you're just joining us, so come on, have a seat, listen to some stories. I decided to take a bath, something I hadn't done since I was 4, something I will never do again. It was something I decided on after a sudden whim. I was washing my face in the sink, getting ready to settle into bed, when I saw the bathtub in the mirror and thought how nice it would be to sit in the tub and read as the bubbles popped around me. So I filled the tub with hot water, pouring in the packet of bubble bath that my mom kept under the sink. I watched the bubbles rise higher and higher and flipped off the water as it reached the appropriate level. Then I slid out of my comfortable sleep clothes and stepped into the luxurious folds of warm water. I buried myself in the warm embrace, the bubbles enveloping me, and leaned my head against the towel I had rolled up. For almost a minute, I felt completely at ease. For a moment, I was completely at peace. As I sat there, letting the heat rise and steam around me, I never felt I never felt the insidious fingers as they crept around my throat. I was so at peace that I never felt the bobbing as something disturbed the water around me. With my eyes closed, I never saw whatever it was that loomed above me, preparing to throttle me into the warm water of my last bath. I opened my eyes for just a second as those strong hands wrapped around my neck and made eye contact with the source of my terror. It was thin and empty, an emaciated corpse with blue black skin like a fresh bruise. It was bald, its head gleaming wetly, and its face was all bones and sinew. Its arms were long, unnaturally long, its skin nearly breaking as its thin arms seemed to bulge with water damage. It was naked, but its waist was submerged beneath the water. If its body was grotesque, then its teeth were the true horror. Its face was set in a rictus of a smile, its sharp little piranha teeth straining against each other as it throttled me. It was like he was smiling and wincing all at once. Then it fell backwards, and I fell along with it as we sank into the tub. The soapy water surrounded me, enveloping me in a warm, embryotic embrace as we sank into the bath that was barely 3 feet deep a moment ago. It continued to choke me, its fingers digging into my skin as it tried to pull me closer so it could bite me with those sharp little teeth. It opened its mouth, my struggling sending bubbles into the watery void, and I could see the teeth stained with something red and gritty. I swung my fists at it, my hands slow as they cut through the water, and as my lungs burned, thought I think I really thought I was going to die right there. As it pulled me closer, I curled my legs back and gave one drastic last endeavor to stay alive. I kicked my feet out and into its stomach, and as the bubbles exploded out of its fanged maw, I turned my head skyward and swam for my life. My arms churned up the water, my legs sending me rocketing towards the surface. I could feel it cutting up the water behind me as all the while. I dared not look. I would see that thing swimming. Its teeth flared as its long arms chewed up the distance, and I'd freeze. I could see a small oval of light hanging in the murky distance, and I swam towards it as fast as possible. My lungs burned and my arms ached. My legs felt like they were constantly connecting with something as it struck out frantically. I surfaced amidst the bubbles, tearing myself out of the tub and falling wetly onto the bathroom floor. That's where my parents found me, screaming and sobbing as I huddled in the corner. That was the first time I have used my hand. This was the first time I have used my hands in 7 days. My parents had me committed that night, committed for my own good. I spent the first night screaming and pulling at my restraints. There was no toilet in my room. Uh-oh. There was no toilet in my room. I'd been catheterized, so I wouldn't need to be unrestrained. But the room had a drop sink near the back wall so the staff could wash their hands and refill the water cup when I wanted to drink. I've watched that sink for the last week, feeling its eyes on me as it peeks from the drain. I watched as it tried to lift the drain out, its fingers pressing thickly into the slits on the drain cover. Then it poked its long, probing fingers from the tip of the spout. When it found that it couldn't come out through either of those means, it just sat in the drain and stared at me, its teeth making maddening little scrapings on the walls of the pipes as it just waited for its chance. It would always disappear when the staff came in, but I knew what I had seen. Hallucinations don't try to throttle you in the bathtub. It's waiting for me now as I write this. Keeping a journal is supposed to help me get over this, but I find myself just wanting to get this all down before something happens to me. It's only a matter of time before someone notices how badly I stink and they make me take a shower. If I'm lucky, they'll leave someone to make sure that I don't hurt myself. If I'm not, they'll give me some privacy, and the sneaky little bugger will have it shot. I don't know if I have the strength to hold it off again, but I intend to fight. And I intend to fight it every league of the way. Hey guys, that was shower blindness. The stream is. Oh man, I hate that. Well, you're here now though. I'm not going anywhere for a little bit, so enjoy. Well, I'm glad you guys finally made it. I'm just reading some stories and doing around a little, answering questions. If you guys have any questions about current stories or storylines or anything, let me know. If it's not going to be too spoilery to answer them, I'll gladly answer them for you. Um, well, at least you guys are here. That's what counts. I left a link in the comments up there. If you guys are looking for books, that'll take you to my Amazon profile. I think all 8 of them are up there. Hey, Crystalline, good of you to make it. We're just kind of reading stories, answering questions. It says you guys is 4K stream, so I'm just, here hanging out, being thankful that you guys come back to watch my stories. Oof. Let's see, what else have we got here? See if I can find some other. Hey. Ooh, that's a good one. We might read that one next. Hopefully you guys are having a good Sunday. This is my last day of vacation, so I'm just kind of resting before I got to go back to work next week. Next week's going to be a good week for stories for you guys. I've got 6 days to work next week, so I'll do a lot of writing, I suppose. Oh yeah, I figured I better do it tonight. Again, since I got to work all week next week. Mr. Green, man, there was someone. It was both the grandson and the grandpa. Actually, they're both pretty powerful. The grandson is just kind of coming into his power, though. I had said earlier, I'm working on getting the last of the lines for a long Glimmer story, that should hopefully be coming out soon. It'll be a 5-parter. Ladama has reprised her role as Glimmer, but she took one look at what I had sent her, and she's like, "That's a lot." I'm like, "Take your time. You are the main focus of this story. We will put it out when you have time." But yeah, there was a lot there. Like it was a big Glimmer story. But it oh yeah, I think you guys will like it. It's a big 5-parter. We get to see Glimmer's family and her whole little community, and it should be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to it. It'll wrap up our second year of Grandpa, so that should be entertaining. Um, then the next bunch of stories will be Grandpa back in Appalachia, and I think uh, I think that one should be a lot of fun too. Like that'll be some of Grandpa's stories once he gets home and up to his forest shenanigans. And I promise we will finally figure out why he throws his beer bottles into the forest. I promise you will all have closure on that one. Um, and yeah. Um, Anybody else? I got time to field questions. If you guys think of anything, let me know. I'm like I said, this is you guys' 4K stream. I am totally here for you. So just let me know. Oh, before we continue, let me do a little bit of soapboxing here. I do too. Grandpa stories are probably my favorite. It definitely it definitely has a point. Grandpa definitely does it for a reason, and I think you guys will enjoy the reason. I think you guys will figure it out. Like I think you guys will like it. It's going to be in the third year stuff though. Which unfortunately will be the last year of Grandpa stories, but I think we're going to do some stuff after that with the grandson too. Um Any rate, I know some of you guys hate the sponsorship in front of the Tuesday Thursday videos, but if you guys are looking for solid like VPN stuff, that's my link to Aura. Um, I'll tell you guys flat. Oh, hey, Laura. I'll tell you guys flat. I get $200 every time one of you guys downloads it for more than like a minute. So if you guys want to support the channel, just go download it and use the 14-day free trial. You know, it's pretty good stuff. They gave me 6 months for free, and I really like it. But anyway, that's enough out of that. I think we're gonna read A Shovel Full of Dirt. It's one of my favorite stories. This one's actually kind of personal. I had a cousin that had something like this happen to him, and it was real sad, but that's like family lore there. Anyway, A Shovel Full of Dirt. I pushed the sign deep into the ground and looked at the kids gathered up the street with a thin with thinly veiled satisfaction. Keep off the dirt, it read. I'd seen the way their eyes gleamed when the truck had come to deliver it and decided on a preemptive strike. A tall pile of fill dirt was irresistible for small children, and I needed as much of the dirt for my project as possible. Having it scattered all over the yard would make it that much more difficult, and I needed to post a sign before the neighborhood rowdies got any ideas. I went back inside then, not wanting to field questions about my dirt just yet. Sitting in my easy chair, pretending to watch the TV, I could see them gathering around to look at the sign. They hunched over the handlebars of the 10 speeds they drove and looked dubiously at the sign. I'd stuck in the mountain of dirt in the front yard. The sign was pretty straightforward, but I wouldn't put it past these kids to find a loophole. They knew me as the cool neighbor, the single guy who gave out full size candy bars at Halloween and sometimes played baseball in the street with them, the guy who drank on his front porch and sometimes let them fish in my canal if it was okay with their parents. Kinda, yeah. He's a cool guy, but he definitely doesn't want kids on his fill dirt. On some things, however, they knew that I was unbending and that it wouldn't do to argue. They all looked up when I came out on the front porch to lean against the rail and look at them. If you're hoping to find a play in the dirt free card somewhere on top of the pile, it ain't happening. Reggie looked up, his face still hopeful. Gee, Mr. McIntyre, that sure is a great looking pile of dirt you got there. I nodded, keeping my face neutral as I tried not to smile. Sure is, and it's for filling in gopher holes, so I'll likely need all of it. If there's any left, though, I'll be sure to let you kids know so you can trample it flat for me. They rode off down the road, sitting a little higher on their bikes, as they realized there might still be hope. I shook my head as I watched them leave. I never knew anyone who got so excited about a pile of dirt as a bunch of kids. Something about all that fresh, powdery dirt just made them a little bit crazy. As I looked at the 6-foot mound of fine white dirt, I almost felt like jumping on myself. I went inside to finish my preparations, getting work clothes on and finding my gloves. I sat in the living room, pulling my boots on, when I saw something out of the corner of my eye. I glanced up, the afternoon shadows just starting to lengthen, and saw a pair of small figures standing beside the road. I paused in mid-tie, looking up to see two small forms looking at the pile of dirt. Looked like a couple of neighborhood kids, maybe having one last look before heading home. Oh, hey, CLC. Good to see you. Welcome back, Laura. You're just in time. The story's just getting started. Let's see. I shook my head. Kids were so predictable. I finished tying my boots and stepped out onto the front porch. Looking is fine, but I don't want to see anyone in my. The road was empty. I looked up and down the road. The kids were already playing a game of touch football further down the cul-de-sac, and I picked up my shovel as I thought about how strange that had been. The two must have been really booking it to make it back to their playmates that quickly. As I started scooping dirt, I thought longingly about having that kind of energy. It would make this job easier. I spent the rest of the afternoon filling in gopher holes. It had been a particularly bad season for them, and the dirt was a band-aid solution at best. The gophers would continue to dig up my yard until I invested in a dog or something. I kept slinging dirt until the sun grew low in the sky. One angry chuck actually coming up to growl at me before I threw a shovelful of dirt on him. When it became too dark to see, I thrust my shovel into the pile and shook the remaining dirt off myself. The kids were finishing up their football game, heading home as the street lights came on. They all looked longingly at the dirt pile, but they knew better than to make a play for it while I was standing on the front porch. My cigarette winked on and off as I stood watching the sun go down, and I pitched the end into the dirt as I went inside. What's going on, man? We're reading A Shovel Full of Dirt, so it's just getting good. I was frying up some hamburgers when I heard the first tremor of laughter from the front yard. Over the sound of popping grease, I could hear the scuttling laughter of children as they played out front. I walked over to the living room window and looked out into the front yard, but the street light's ghostly light, I could see them playing on the mound of dirt I had out front. There were two of them, both dressed in dirty jeans and colorful shirts, and both having a ball as they capered on the pile of dirt. I was out the door in a matter of seconds, yelling before the door could fully come shut. Hey, so what the hell do you think you're doing? Can't you read? Stay off the. Street lights were dim, but even I could see the absence of people in my yard. I walked over to the pile, looking down to see if anyone was hiding behind it. I saw pretty quickly that it wasn't going to be the case. The pile of dirt was hardly 3 feet tall, and a kid would have to get pretty low to hide behind it. I glanced up and down the street, but the only thing moving on the road was an old chip bag pushed by the wind. I looked back at the pile and was shocked to find that I didn't even see any footprints. The wide, low dirt pile still looked fairly pristine, other than the shovel marks. I scratched my head, sure of what I'd seen, but I went back inside anyway. We're reading A Shovel Full of Dirt if you're just joining us, so have a seat, listen to some stories. Maybe I had just been working too hard today. I pulled my fries out of the oven just as they started to burn. No, you don't, Laura. No, you don't. Florida's off. But I appreciate you saying so. Oh, I swore I'd never come back, but then I did. So you never leave Florida. It just dragged you back eventually. I pulled my fries out of the oven just as they started to burn. I made 2 hamburgers and added them to the pile of French fries. I tipped a beer into a chilled glass and brought both to the table. After an afternoon of spent shoveling dirt, I was tired and ready for a bite, and as I lifted the first one from my plate, I heard my stomach grumble as the grease oozed off the meat. I had just taken the first bite when I heard the metal clang of my shovel falling over. It is pretty sad. I looked up to find those kids playing on my dirt pile again. I came barreling out the door, my dinner cooling on my plate as I stormed out to send these kids off. I was becoming frustrated. I'd made it pretty clear that I didn't want people on my dirt. It had been I'd been pretty nice about it, posting signs and asking the kids not to mess with it. But it appeared that some of these kids weren't getting it, or just weren't getting it. If I needed to be a bastard to keep these kids off my dirt, I supposed I'd have to be a bastard. I had barely gotten 2 words out of my mouth before I once again noticed the dirt was empty. I think we all miss Florida sometimes. But yeah, the last 3 hurricanes were a little rough, especially Michael. That steamrolled right over Panama City. I still don't think my house is fully back to normal. I was really getting tired of this. I know what I saw, and what I saw was a pair of filthy kids on my pile of dirt. No matter how many times I checked that yard, there was never any sign of trespassers. The strange part was a lack of footprints, though. The sand was fresh, maybe even a little damp when you got past the top layer. The kids were jumping on the dirt like a trampoline. There should have been footprints, handprints, something. They came back 3 more times that night, but the last is the only one that really stands out. That was the worst of their appearances. They appeared again as I was finishing my dishes, and again as I sat watching TV. I came striding out to holler at them both times, but all I found was an empty yard both times. This was ridiculous. What the hell was going on? I know what I saw, but they were always gone the instant I came outside. Nobody could move that fast, especially. Excuse me. Excuse me. Let's see. I know what I saw, but they were always gone the instant I came outside. Nobody could move that fast, especially not a bunch of dirty little kids. And what the hell was going on? What the hell were they doing out after dark? Most of the parents on the block didn't let their kids out after the streetlights came on. Something funny was going on. The last time I saw them, that night at least, was just before bedtime. I'd thought the pranks were over as time slipped on. It was 11 o'clock, and I was walking through the living room to get something to help me sleep. I was still a little on edge, and I thought a nightcap might help me calm down. I was coming out of the kitchen with my tumbler of whiskey, the curtains still open on the front yard, when I saw them there. My glass slipped out of my hand as the 2 kids stood crouched on top of my dirt pile. I was speechless for a moment as the angry fire built inside me. I was furious. Who the hell did these kids think they were? They came out in the middle of the night trying to mess with me, but why? I had made a very simple request. Why were these kids tormenting me? Because I wouldn't let them play on my dirt pile? Ah, completely understandable. We're listening to A Shovel Full of Dirt if you guys are just joining us. So pull up a chair, listen to some stories. If I had stopped to quell my anger, I might have noticed that something wasn't right with these two. The night air was cool on my bare chest as I came scrambling out of my house like an angry bull. Who the hell do you think you are? It's almost midnight. Get your asses over here right now. I'm going to call your parents and let them know what you've been up to. I got a good mind to. They hadn't moved this whole time, though. They just stood on the mound of dirt like two scrawny scarecrows, glowering at me through their dirt caked faces. My God, had they been eating the dirt or something? I had thought them filthy, but these kids were downright grimy. They didn't seem at all concerned with me, but I definitely had their full attention. I had come half into the yard when I saw their eyes. They both seemed to have a nasty case of red eye. They stared at me, their eyes gleaming, and I suddenly noticed that they cast no shadow in the dim street light. They should have. The dirt pile and my shovel cast a long gantry in the failing light, but these two had nothing. I had stopped now, barely 20 feet from the pair, when the larger of the two took a step towards me. When his dirty sneaker gritted against the loose earth, the red piping looked fading beneath all that. The red piping looking faded beneath all that mud. I saw the earth draw up over it like a hand. He opened his mouth, trying to say something, but all that came out was wet soil. Sand and mud bubbled out of his lips, and the dirt that had covered his foot had begun to slide up his leg as well. The other fell to his knees, clutching his throat as he coughed up leaves and mud. The sand slid over his hands and up his arms, even as the dirt bound the first boy to the pile by the knees. They both struggled, trying to free themselves from the prison of sand, but their efforts were ultimately in vain. The sand reclaimed them both in a sudden whoosh. In a blink, they were both gone. I walked backwards, never taking my eyes off the pile until the dirt was closed. Until the dirt was closed. Until the door was closed between us. The next day, I set to work early. I wanted that pile of dirt out of my yard before nightfall. I worked diligently, filling in holes and putting the pile to good use. I used it to fill in a few of the potholes in front of my house even. I just wanted as much of it gone as I could manage. I no longer cared how that happened. When the kids came by on their bikes, I told them to leave. They seemed disappointed, but I didn't want them anywhere near the pile of dirt. I was filling in an extremely large gopher hole when something caught my eye. I had nearly turned back to the pile when something pale and long made me take a second look. At first, I thought it might be a worm, but the more I looked, the more I thought I knew what it was. I bent down, the shovel hitting the ground woodenly as I reached down to pick it up. What I hoped was a bleached piece of wood. It wasn't, though. It was cold and malleable, if not unmovable, and crooked like a sea of pale, purpling flesh. The perfectly filthy nail was hardly visible at the tip of the small finger. I went back to the pile and saw that the rest of the hand was poking from the bottom, minus the finger that I had accidentally severed. The cops came when I called, and they brought dogs they brought dogs with them as well as a big white forensics van. They excavated the bodies of a 10-year-old boy from the bottom of the dirt pile, his face frozen in a look of terrified disbelief. He was dressed in very dirty, but if not very familiar clothes, and his sneakers had the same filthy red piping that I had seen the night before. When they lifted him free, they found his other hand intertwined with something, and as he came out, so too did the other hand. The other boy had been about 8, and the two had died hand in hand. The police had wanted to arrest me or at least bring me in for questioning, but the forensics guys figured out pretty quickly that these kids had been dead for at least a month. A quick search determined that they had been on the missing persons roster for about 3 weeks, and their parents had feared that some pervert had abducted them. They'd been playing near the sand pits, and their parents they'd been playing near the sand pits before they had gone missing, and the coroner would later find dirt and mud in their lungs and mouths. He figured they had been climbing the big sand pile. They figured they'd been climbing the big sand piles they have out there, piles just waiting to be scooped into trucks and sold as fill dirt, when one of them had been sucked down by a pocket of air or an empty spot in the pile. His brother had tried to help him and ended up getting pulled in as well. The two had suffocated as they tried to get out and been picked up by the fill dirt as they trucked it to the company I had bought it from. It happens sometimes, the coroner told me when I asked about it a few weeks later. Kids never think about that kind of thing. They just see a big pile of dirt and start climbing. I haven't seen the two since they took the bodies away, and the company I bought it from came and got the rest of the dirt as they gave me a full refund. I hope they find peace wherever they are now. I think from now on I'll just hire someone to fill in the holes in my yard. I don't ever want to see another pile of dirt for as long as I live. That is a shovel full of dirt. I had a cousin that was playing on a big pile of dirt when we were kids. I wasn't playing with him. He and his brother were, and his brother said he found like an air pocket or something in the pile of dirt they were playing on and just got sucked right under. He died, like he suffocated. And I remembered it years later and thought it would make a decent story. Thanks, Rizzo. Rizzo's with me on the Hell channel over there, and we've been putting out some videos pretty recently. He just put out one about, what was it, Riz? Was it the Chernobyl stories? That I do a couple of voices for. That I liked it. It was a good story. I was glad to be a part of it. Nice. You should have. Yep, Chernobyl stories. Nightmares make great story fuel. I'm here to tell you. Half of mine are just weird crap that I've dreamed up. Well, thank you. I'm sure the other guys did a great job too. It was a good story. Rizzo's got a good channel. I would definitely go check him out. Everybody on the Hell channel's got a really good voice for it. Got a really good channel. I'm really hoping it picks up speed here. I would love to have a channel that we showcase people on. That way they can, you know, smaller creators can have a place to go and get their stories out there. It would be great to have something like that. Hang on. I'm going to here. If you guys haven't got a link to it yet, that is Rizzo's story there. So you can go check it out. And if you'd like, you can subscribe to the Hell channel, the Horror Entertainment League channel. Just one L, not two. I'm not quite that sneaking towards blasphemy there, but I think it's a good thing over there. I think it's definitely a great place to showcase newer creators or creators you might not have heard of. Yeah, I had meant to do more with the Exorcism of Calvin. Like, I'd meant to have some stories that kind of like, sort of like, kind of like butted up to that. I may still, I don't know. I had meant to link him up with the story about the Looking Glass cat too. Like maybe he was one of those cats that had come through, and that's why he was like that. But I think it's just better to believe he was possessed by a demon or something. It's growing a lot. It's looking really good. I'm hoping that it really gets bigger and that it can help a lot of people get seen. There's so many good narrators out there and so many good creators that just they don't get the attention they deserve. Yes, I believe Father Maxi was in that story. I think he might have been from one of my other stories too, but I can't remember. I write so many stories, man. Somebody asked me, I guess they were like, what's your volume? And I realized the other day I'll average about 9,000 words a day sometimes. Like if I'm just really cooking. Like it's nothing for me to just like sit down and crank out these stories like real quick. Like it's crazy. Nice. I can't wait to see it, man. I had originally intended to like kind of like link them up, like make them connected, but it just never came about. um Here lately I like to keep connected stories on the Monday and the Friday, and just Wednesday stories are kind of free form. Um I've got 5 more on the Dollar General series, and then I'm working on part 5 on the follow-up to that, Beyond the Dollar General Beyond. But, there's going to be a book about the Dollar General stories. I'm actually working on it now. I think we're about halfway done. Um, it's called, The Douglas Gage Beyond Savings, because I mean, clearly I had to change the name. I don't wanna get sued by Dollar General. Um It's hard, Rizzo. It's hard, man. I sometimes it just won't come. But yeah, I would expect to see more on the Dollar General. Plus, I'll probably do another week of them, so I'll just do like 5, like one a day. That way we can finish out the current run. Oh man, I hate when that happens, CLC. Like it's every now and again. Oh, you mean Mr. Harzo? Yeah. Look for him to be in a few more stories. I think he's definitely going to make a comeback. I'm sure you can, man. I'm sure you'll get there. Um, you'll get a good story, Rizzo. Sometimes it just takes time, man. Like the house thrift store guy. I've been asking him lately. I'm like, hey man, when's the next part coming on? And he says he's struggling a little bit. But I'm like, you'll get there, man. You got this. You will get there eventually. It just takes time sometimes. Um, the Dollar General stuff, the Dollar General stuff was meant to be a one-off. Like I really had no plans to continue it. It was just supposed to be a guy that got stuck in a liminal space Dollar General, but it really took off. Like it was really popular. So I just kept doing it. They really came quick too. Like I found myself just churning them out, and after a while they became kind of second nature. I feel you, man. I feel like on my off week here, I haven't wrote as much as I should, but I definitely got a lot of good relaxation in. Like it just sometimes that's why I'm afraid to quit my job. Like I'm like, man, is it just am I gonna have no like drive to write once I do? I know I will, but it'll take me a while to work into a routine. Dark Somnium's awesome. He approached me to do a voice earlier today. That story is going to appear on my channel Tuesday, but he's going to do the voice of another character and put it on his soon, I think too. Um, I did the grandpa in one of his upcoming stories, but he's got a really good voice for stuff too. I really like listening to his stories. I'm thinking about seeing if he wants to come into the Hell channel too. I could use some regular narrators to put out a lot of stuff. Um, One of them on their cat. I think you've talked to her, Rizzo. She's got uh, a sub on Reddit that she's working with, and it's really pushed me to do more like more drama stories, I guess, like more sound effects and more like immersive stuff. Um, this laughing audience story on Monday. Like, look for sorry, look for a lot of that. Like, there's a lot of sound effects and it's real immersive. And I'm thinking about doing more of that. Like, I really like the way that kind of thing comes out. She and I are doing a collab on one of my older stories that we're going to put up there, and I think it's really gonna come out good. I'm gonna do a lot of sound effects. I'm gonna do a lot of immersive stuff, and I think I'm gonna start doing that regularly in some of the stories. Like, make like almost like radio productions instead of just narrations. Maybe put a little spit and polish on it. You know how it is. I do like stories with an assembled cast. Like, I used to do something similar with Lady Vengeance and the Baron Landred, but I haven't heard from either of them in a while. I'm hoping they're all right. I'm hoping they haven't just dropped off. I really miss doing collabs with them. She would definitely be the one to go to. She's got a good voice for it. I I used to have a few female voices that I do stuff with, but I haven't heard from any of them lately. I other than La Dama de Blanca, like a lot of the women that I used to do narrations with have kind of like just stopped narrating, and it sucks because sometimes you need a female voice for a video, and there's just you can't find one. I've been trying to make sure that mine aren't too loud. Some of them, yeah, they definitely like throw them in there, and it's just too loud. Like, you can't hear the narration. I kind of try to tune mine down a little bit so it's not overpowering, but we'll see if I did a good job. Like, sometimes it sounds louder in the video than it is when I'm playing around with it. So we shall see, I guess. You'll have to let me know how it comes out. Well, guys, I think that's going to about do it for me. I'm starting to lose my voice. I guess we know that 4 stories is my limit then. Um, right. Sometimes, like with music, sometimes I think I've mixed it just right, but then it's not. Like, it didn't come out the way it should have. Um, if you guys have got any pressing questions, I'll stick around for a little while longer. My voice is starting to get crunchy, and I don't want to. I've got to do a few more stories tomorrow, so I don't want to completely blow the pipes out there. Trying to get all my stories done a little bit ahead of time that way, because next week's going to be a bear. This coming up week is going to be an absolute bear, and I don't want to be scrambling to get everything done or trying to upload stuff late like I did this week a little bit. I know I definitely missed some marks this week, but I'm waiting to hear back from some people for my Thursday story. I don't know what I'm going to read otherwise. I may have to put together a compilation of other narrator stuff. Probably do. Probably do. I think I've got some in the den. I'll see if I can lay hands on. Otherwise, it may just be some honey tea or something and off to bed. Coffee with cream probably didn't help much. Well, guys, I think that's going to about wrap it up for me. Thanks for joining me. Congrats on getting us to 4K. You guys are amazing. Not yet. Golden View Asylum may be a place we revisit at some point, though. I don't know. But no, I think the glowing tunnel was just gonna be a one-off, man. Okie doke, guys. Y'all have a good rest of your Sunday night, and I will catch you next time. I think we'll probably do another one at 5K. I know that's a ways off, but I'm sure we'll get there pretty quick. Oh, thanks, man. Appreciate that. The honeyed word story. That one was fun. All right, guys. Love you guys. We'll catch you next time. Have a good night. Bye.